experiences in relation to the screwworm among cattle producers, generating spaces of direct communication to strengthen prevention and control actions in cooperation with the governments of the countries we are initiating. On behalf of Dr. Diego Montenegro Ernest, representative of AICA in Mexico, and Dr. Jose Ordaz, manager of health, agricultural health for safety on AICA, we welcome you and we wish you this conversation will be a great success. We thank the producers that are here with us to share these experiences. For Mexico, it is quite pertinent to have the experience of you all. We have Dr. Armando Garcia Lopez. He will give us the generalities about the cattle screwworm. Doctor, floor is yours. You have 20 minutes starting now. Go ahead. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to talk to producers and to interact with the official staff and people involved in the sector. It is a great opportunity for us to be able to share these experiences among producers and to listen your views to adapt all the measures we are developing in Mexico and to have a common front of alliance producers and the official sector for this situation. So we thank you for this opportunity. Let me share my screen. Can you confirm that you can hear the screen? Perfect. We can see it perfectly. As you know, Mexico is a country free from the disease, but we are preparing on a daily basis in case this worm arrives here. This disease is marking risk and he's moving to the north to help us. So we are developing strategies that will allow us to address this issue. So I would like to comment that there is a important variety. It's really hard to hear him. I'm trying to do my best. This fly uh, is very important because when we need information, we give material to understand, and we emphasize a lot in these larvae that are in the live animals. So they developed in warm-blooded animals. So with this, we are including warm-blooded includes human beings. So the ideal sample is to take the sample to find the larva that is in the deepest part of the wounds because it may exist in the surface part of the wounds, and that will give us more information. It is also important that it enters into the wounds, and the best possibility is the one that the best one is the one that is till the end. So it is important to extract all the larvae. It is hard to hear him. Yeah, it is hard for people to listen to you in Spanish and even for the interpreter. So could you approach the microphone? Thank you very much.
Doctor Armando, le escuchamos. Gracias.
Si me escuchan mejor sin los audífonos, creo que mejor lo puedo exponer de esta manera, ¿no?
Lo escuchamos mejor así, doctor. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ustedes. Les comentaba la
So
importancia,
I
la
was telling you about the pertinence of taking a sample of a larva that is in the deepest part of the wound because there may be contamination with other larvae, and that gives us a false indication. One of the aspects we are emphasizing is in this treatment of wounds. It is important to remove all the organic matter and to clean the wound and to start applying the medication that we will mention in a while because that facilitates. Sometimes we believe the wound is completely clean. The we apply the medication and we see more larvae coming out. So we open the sample taking because sometimes there are more larvae where we thought that the wound was completely clean. We have two varieties that are highlighted. Flies that participate in animals of warm blood. So we have the Alminovorax and the Chrysomia baesiana. They are mandatory. The type of myiasis is mandatory. You can see the map. Those are similar flies from the same family, but one is in our continent and the other one in the European continent. I believe the adopter is more aggressive than the one, but the one that we are taking care of is the omnivorax. I was saying that it is the larva of the fly which feeds on live tissue and fluids. We need to highlight this because it is related to the importance of the place we will need to take the samples in order to have an effective diagnosis. This parasitosis expands very quickly because the fly tries to feed, and in the case of the females, they're looking for the wounds to lay their eggs. We have the diphthera, is the of the order of Diptera, family Caliporidae, genus Cochleomia, and species Cochleomia omnivores. It is mainly developed in tropical and subtropical regions. In cold weather or cold climate, the development is delayed, but they do not develop as fast as in the other ones. Normally, in half of the United States, we see the fly and the eradication began in the south till getting up to Panama. It was not developed to the north. The cycle is part of what I commented. Depending on the temperatures, life cycle may be 18 days in tropical climate and 21 days in temperate climate. However, it continues developing. This is because in the North States, we have a quite marked climate. Temperatures go down a lot, but the cycle is delayed, but the fly continues developing. So sexual maturity for males 24 hours and females 6 to 7 days. We have an important advantage, which is the one that is being used to develop this. The females mate only once in their life. If they mate with a sterile male, it does not mean that we're not going to generate more flies, but the male mate several times. But The females lay between 200 and 400 eggs. We have even found up to 70 larvae, and that gives you the idea of the important capacity to reproduce and to affect other animals. To the left of your screen, you can see the biologic cycle. This is the larva phase and the egg phase because the egg pose in the wounds and then it becomes a pupa and we so checking the wounds up to the deepest position, that's good. So we need to avoid falling. We need to avoid that larvae can fall down because they can produce it themselves. The flight travels up to 20 kilometers, and a larvae can travel up to 300 kilometers. What we have seen, and we have seen problems in Central America, is that kilometers and disappear not because the flights a lot, but because unfortunately we are really used to the cattle traffic illegally, and the flight goes away, it goes much far away than without inspections. So with this, although there is a disease, the main mechanism is because we are not having a good control of the mobilization, and this very often is marked by the need, if we can call it, to complete herd of cattle. We don't want to remain with one animal because I prefer the animal to live. There are common practices. The cattle is marked the same day it is shifted, and in the course, the worms develop. So all these mechanisms and the common work being performed is complicating a little bit, well, not a little bit, a lot, the control of the disease because it establishes barriers and it moves beyond barriers and goes to the north. And without the correct inspection, the most affected animal in Central America is the north bovine. In some countries, it's the pig because they are tied from the neck, and this is where the fly deposit their eggs. The other one is the dog. Unfortunately, we have a lot of, we have many dogs without hair in our places. So this is another species that is really affected, but this is true. Everybody has a dog, and they do not care about the dog, but the day you see the dog sick, you take care of. And if it is free from the disease, in that case, it is my dog, although I have not taken care before. The most important mention, according to the experts, is that it has a characteristic odor, and once the wound is removed, we will never forget what we saw. In Mexico, to make senses more acute, we're using dogs with important training in relation to the aroma because we have many bovines here, and that occurs because temperatures are lower than in other places. That's why we are seeing this situation uh, and this presence. So sometimes it's difficult to detect the presence because of the early signs of the disease. The type of wound may be any wound. In our working, it means we have many wounds, castration, regardless the fact that they can wound themselves with their fences, for example. So it's difficult in the hands, and we can generate a wound which is an open window for the larva to develop. Even a tick can be developed. Some countries that have a lot of presence of bats, uh, the bite of a bat is an entry door for many larvae. All of us know that we have other species that produces the same thing. This in case of wounds, we have some marginal things on the parts of the animals where we can see this disease. It may be on the vulva of animals. The most common wound infected is there is just a special part where we have found many presence of the larvae, and I'm referring to the navel, to the belly button. This is where we found a lot of larvae, and in the natural holes that for any reason are affected. So you can see the pictures. If, for example, if the animal sleeps with with open mouth, the fly develops in this hole as well. The disease is disseminated all South America. In Chile, we were able to eradicate this. This is in Mexico, in Honduras, and Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Costa Rica. There was sort of coverage, but there is a logic in other parts of the South America, the thinnest part. So this is why we have this presence and difficult to control. Currently, it is present in Honduras. The last record I have from Honduras is 14 cases. It is just beginning in Honduras. Our main headache is that the cattle from Nicaragua, which be soon affected. In Mexico, the market and the market we cover an important amount of bovines to protect them from the disease. Our intention is not to take measures that will affect the populations. The measures are sanitary measures only. Many problems of security, illegal traffic of exotic species. There is also a demand of some primates that are going to the north. All these are factors that we need to consider, and we are following the strategies that led us from the sanitation point of view to take care of this. Our idea is that any cattle that travels from the southern border to the north is free from this worm, to avoid that this disseminates to the north. We are taking several actions at the national level. As you can see, this is the distance where we have the presence of the larvae in Mexico. We have an entry in our country, so we need to be active to detect as soon as possible the presence and to take the necessary measures. Our main factor is the legal and illegal movement of the cattle. This is one of the important factors. So this is a public health problem that affects migrants as well. We have an irregular migration situation here to Mexico, and in many areas of the south of the country, we have a big number of animals of wildlife. I'm really sorry, but it's really difficult to understand what he's saying. He's not using a microphone. I'm trying to do my best. My apologies. So I was saying that among the most important risk factors is the movement of the cattle is so there's an irregular traffic of cattle trying to avoid the inspection or the pandemic inspections. I don't want to enter into details, but in Mexico, we tried to the cost of eradication of the cattle screwworm is 413 million of USD. In Central America, 269 millions for a total of 682 million. You can see in the bottom of this slide the number of animals affected. The economic problems and problems for the societies. June 29 of 24, Mexico activated a national device of emergency, a national device of emergency of animal health. This is related to the imminent risk of the situation. We are focused in Section 6 and 7, the Yucatan Peninsula, Chiapas, Tabasco, and Oaxaca. Why? Because we know that they are at risk. The strategies we are following in Mexico: promotion of notification and dissemination of information about this. And thanks to AICA support, we are strengthening to grow. Why? Because with 33 years of this disease, we have lost a lot of knowledge regarding the larvae. So people have experience and forget how to cure the wound. With 33 years, we have a lot of experience in a series of surgeons and veterinarian physicians without experience with this disease. So any information being distributed and or this is becoming really important. In the records we have, 80% of the success of the campaign for eradication was notification, because there are many eyes looking at many animal species, and we have been able to perfectly identify it without any trouble. So we have applied a good registration and control, because the species are affected are so many that it is impossible to have information of all of them. So the social participation is important. The wound treatment is our second point, where we are working hard. So the idea is that the population can treat a dog, a cat, any animal people can have to avoid a wound of this become contaminated. So we prefer to give for free some of the products. People can get it for free with us. What we ask is to take a sample of the larva and to call as we go and pick this sample up in order to diagnose the disease and to give general instructions. But that led us to georeference the place to take the sample. What I was mentioned about cases for the control of modification, we are we're gonna include some devices to bathe the cattle for to avoid the flight to continue its pathway affecting the whole country. Basically, the states of Michoacan, Aguascalientes,
Doctor,
and
se nos
others.
acaba el tiempo, una disculpa.
So we are running out of time, doctor. Please. Okay, thank you.
No, ya para concluir y ya le damos paso a la siguiente persona. Gracias.
So, thank you. Please, you can conclude and we give room to the next speaker.
Gracias, doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Armando Garcia Lopez, Director of
Pues
CPA.
también quiero
Well,
agradecer que está con
I also
nosotros
want to thank
el
the
doctor Iván
presence of
Espinosa,
Dr. Ivan
representando
Espinosa,
al señor
representing
doctor Nando,
Mr.
que es el
Liberto
presidente
Hernandez.
y
He is the president.
de
He is the
Opormex
chair
y
of
las
OPORMEX and
organizaciones de
the
agricultores
organizations of
mexicanos y
um, pork
iberoamericanos.
growers in Mexico and the Iberoamerica. Thank you.
Ahora le
Now,
cedo la palabra
let's give the
al
floor
doctor Néstor
to
Avendaño,
Dr. Nestor Avendaño,
como director
Technical
regional
Assistant of the Regional Directorate
de
of
Animal
Animal
Health.
Health of
Él nos va a hablar sobre
WOAH.
los diagnósticos
He will talk
regionales
about
y
diagnosis
distribuciones
and
de la
regional strategies
catorosis.
of the cattle
Adelante,
screwworm.
doctor. Tienes
Go ahead, doctor.
15 minutos.
You
Gracias.
have 15 minutes.
Muchísimas gracias. Un gusto saludarles a todos. Eh, ¿Pueden ver la pantalla?
Can you see my screen?
Oh, no, no,
Ok.
todavía no.
Not right now.
Ahora,
Let me
Listo.
just
Listo.
try. Now we can see
Nada
it.
más en modo exacto, en modo presentación. Muchas gracias, doctor.
So thank you. If you can do the presentation mode. Okay, here we go.
Adelante, doctor.
muchísimas gracias. Un gusto saludarles
Thank
a
you
todos.
very much.
Bueno, en nombre de Loisa, el director regional de salud animal, el doctor Abelardo de Gracia y el director ejecutivo Raúl Rodas, pues para Loisa siempre es un placer participar en estos foros y poder mantener al tanto, digamos,
So
a
it is a pleasure for us to be part of this forum and to provide information like the one we have for all of the producers. The screwworm, it's something that has been happening as of late in the latest months, as Armando explained. And the behavior of the disease, I would like to talk a little bit about the situational diagnostics and the regional strategy in the screwworm. In Central America, we have an epidemiological situation that we share with member countries. Countries usually share their diagnostics, and we can say that Panama, for example, the one that was affected first and where this disease got out of control. And then we went to contention and eradication of the disease. It's been various new cases this week, over 28,000 and about 472 for week number 40. The same in Costa Rica. We have new cases 169, over 9,000 reported ever since the emergency started. and about 415 reports in week 40. Nicaragua has 263 cases for week 40, uh, accumulated over 3,000, and about 200 reports in the last weeks. The worm made it to Honduras until October the 5th, 5 cases through October the 5th. And the species that have been the most affected in Honduras is barely starting. But in the first, it was over here, most of the cases due to mobilization. That's pretty much their theory. That's how we believe it was introduced to Honduras. And it has really been the main cause of introduction to the Central American countries into Honduras, the mobilizing of livestock or animals that that are being smuggled and that do not go through the appropriate controls. The main species in control, we have bovine, 75%, 13% porcine, and the rest. And here you can see the lesions and the injuries, which are the ones the most affected, the worm. And as the doctor well puts it in his presentation, the navel and the traumatic uh, wounds are the ones that come first. It's about 57% in this case, and in the first case. And what we do is healing of the navel, 32%. We recommend paying attention to the management and just make sure the worm was eradicated because a lot of countries were caught off guard and they started diminishing or reducing the controls. And that has provoked that the worm actually has come back way stronger. But if we heal navel, we would be reducing about 30%. And if we heal injuries and wounds, it will be about 50%. And we're talking about vampire bats, warts, and hoof are things that lesions that have been important and found to be significant. Week 40, Panama. Here we can see the distribution. And the main measures of control is the healing of wounds, identification here in the case of Panama. Here we've got the chart. Here you can see that as of this year, the trend goes upwards and it's maintained that way. So this is Panama. This is the trend between 23 and 24. This is actually maintained and it's much higher in 2024. Here we can see some important peaks and some important lows, but the trend continues to be the same, regretfully, due to the contention strategy. Currently, there is no dispersion of flies in Panama and Costa Rica, only in Nicaragua and in the border with Honduras, where we're going to release sterile flies. And the Panamanian authorities have a harder time in control, but actually reducing the incidence of wounds, you can control that. And the eradication campaigns, we will continue. Once we've done that, we will continue with the dispersion of sterile flies. In Costa Rica, the trend was in week 28 last week, halfway through the year. And as of this year, cases started going up, and it has had a trend towards decreasing, but we cannot talk about having controlled the disease. This is a trend, but the cases are always there. And I explained in Costa Rica, we don't have dispersion of flies. The distribution is domestic. As you can see here, you can see the map of new cases on the left. Here we can see a distribution throughout the country and the total amount of cases at the national level of the accumulated cases, as you can see, it's all over. It's well spread throughout the country. Nicaragua, has shown the same trend since week 11. So we have the first case, and there was a total high of 420, an all-time high of 420, and it has been between 200 and 250 as an average. Nicaragua has done a great work, a great effort to contain the dissemination of the screwworm, but they have a lot of people on the field, and the one that has worked the best is healing of wounds, as you can see, uh, and sanitary. We have done also some dispersion, but regretfully, this was able to be contained for a long time in the southern part of Nicaragua, as you can see in the map. Most of the cases have been presented in the southern part of Nicaragua. As you can see, we had created some dispersion of flies just to get ahead of the movement, but due to the mobilization control, this one leapt into those contention grids that were being dispersed, and we have had some cases uh, on the border with Honduras, which has provoked that for the last 4 weeks. In the week 37, we had the first reports in Honduras of the screwworm, and we're barely starting to create a chart about the cases in Honduras. Here we've got the map. As you can see, most of the cases are very close to the border with Nicaragua, and you can see close to the Gulf, and um, as you can see, the movement of livestock which are on their way north, and most of these 15 cases have been because they have entered like this. We have some cases rather in the like in the middle of the border between Nicaragua and Honduras, and we believe that has been due to mobilization because this is the first indigenous case detected in Honduras. More investigation is being carried out, but we're able to find at least one more case in the border close with Nicaragua, or close to the border with Nicaragua. The contention grids have been established. So we have four main recommendations. The first one of them all is, of course, the preventive treatment, management, and the healing of wounds. Having this culture of healing the wounds. Uh, if there's not a wound in the beast, then the fly is not going to be able to thrive. That's the main way that we have to prevent this infestation. Then we have the epidemiologic surveillance, um, both active, passive, and sanitary as well. And it will be easier to control that way. And we're going to be able to contain it, at least so that the cases are not triggered up. So we also can do control of mobilization, both domestically and across the border. As we explained, most of the cases, the movement, the mobilization of animals without any controls would throw off all of these controls because they don't really transport animals in a way that could prevent the infestation by healing the wounds, preparing baths of the livestock, for example, and cleaning of the livestock. And then, of course, the dispersion of the sterile fly, both by land and by
Aquí
air. And
estamos
that
en
will
la
be to
página
eradicate. Sorry, doctor, that I
16.
interrupt, but we have to close now. We believe the fly will do the work by itself, but if we don't have these first three strategies, the fly will not work. So we have to do it. And these are the grids that we have designed. The black dots are those where we have located the dispersion of the flies by land. The grids are air grids, and we're working here in Nicaragua. Before the emergency in Honduras, we established this imaginary line, which is where we're going to locate the controls of mobilization, and this is for Honduras. We have also designed the grids, one of the first ones in the areas, and we have been working on them since day one when we detected animals with the disease. And we have also located land cages, and then we have some contention areas for Guatemala and contention areas for Belize, so as to keep it contained within Central America. And from OIRSA, we are providing technical assistance. We are providing also accompaniment for all of the different areas that have been affected. We have had some regional um, emergency funds, and we have released some of them. We have also have had some meetings and coordinations with IGACAPAO, amongst many, and an early alert system, EAS, very close to what the CPA works with. And that is the part of the support that Mexico has always provided for the region because it was the base to establish this early alert system. And we have provided training sessions for the countries throughout the region, mostly when it comes to diagnostics, uh, about on the contention strategies, management of wounds, uh, types of larvicides that can be used, and a quick response to emergencies, acquiring inputs to for prevention, management, to procure different products, and webinars to design work plans. And we have different committees to handle emergencies, both for the countries that have been affected and those that are free so far, and that we have designed contingent plans for Honduras, Salvador, and Belize, and an economic framework in the next days. In the month of October, we're going to have a regional workshop on healing of wounds and diagnostics. Thank you very
Gracias,
much.
doctora Avendaño.
Thank you,
Bueno,
Dr. Avendaño. Now
estamos muy
we're
sobrepasados,
going to
pero
make
podemos
some
continuar
adjustments. We
con
are way
rápida
over
sesión de
time,
preguntas y respuestas.
and then we're going to
Tenemos
try and
oportunidad
have
de
a Q&A
productores
session at the
de
end so that we will have the opportunity
presentaron sus
for
experiencias.
producers to
Tenemos
present
ahora
us with
talleres
their
de
experiences. Now we
diseño
will
de
have the
estrategias
interventions by
del señor
by
José
Victor
González.
Peña,
Ellos son
Jose
productores
Gonzalez.
de las
They are
zonas de
producers
Darién y de
of
Panamá
the
Este.
Darien area in
Muchas
eastern
gracias por
Panama.
estar aquí.
Thank you very much for being
Bueno,
here
me
with us
gustaría
today,
orientar las
gentlemen.
preguntas.
I would like
Este tema
to guide
pueden
the questions
contestar
on
quienes
this
quieran,
topic.
una
You can
primero y después la
answer
otra, o
first and then ask
les
another
otorgo el
question,
tema y ustedes
or I
pueden
defer
contestar.
to you.
Por ejemplo,
You can handle this. For
quizá
example,
es
we've thought
necesario
that it
conocer
is
cómo nosotros
necessary to
formamos una
get to
presencia
know
del gusano
how
barrenador
you became aware of
en
the
su
presence
país.
of this screwworm in your
Fue a
country.
través de los casos que se dieron
Was it
cuenta de
through
ustedes,
the
de sus
cases?
vecinos, o
Was
fue
it through
porque
your
escucharon
neighbors?
en
Was it
algún
because you heard
medio
about it? Did you
de
read in
alguna
media?
manera
How
sus
did you become
veterinarios? Me gustaría
aware?
que nos
Or maybe it
compartieran
was
esto.
your vets.
También,
We would
cómo
like for
entienden
you to share
ustedes
this
la
information.
prevalencia del gusano barrenador en su país. Si nos pueden platicar un
And
poco
then
sobre
how do you address the
cómo
emergency of
eliminan,
the
cómo eliminan
screwworm? How
ustedes
do
el
you
gusano y
eliminate
cómo hacen
the
prevención
worm? And how do you
hacia
proceed with the
serios,
healing of the wound? And how do you report the cases? Those that you suspected. I think those would be enough questions to ignite a conversation. Please, gentlemen, go right ahead. Good morning. Can you hear me,
Sí,
folks?
ahorita vamos a tener la
Yes,
participación
we are
de
going to
Panamá,
have the
posteriormente
participation of
Guatemala
Panama
y
right
después
now,
también la
then
comisión
it'll
de los
be Costa
productores de
Rica,
orina y al final
and
vamos a
then
hacer un despacho.
Mexico. And
Adelante,
then
por
at the
favor,
end, we can
señor.
have like a
Gracias.
sort of a panel. So
¿Me
please,
escuchan?
gentlemen, go away. Can
Sí,
you
bien,
folks hear
fuerte y
me?
claro.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Good morning. Blessings to all. My name is Jose Gonzalez. I am a direct producer of the province of DN in Panama. Along with my colleague here, we're going to share some of our experiences in our province, which we know is a province that has had a lot of cases and where we have to conduct arduous work to eradicate the worm. Your first question was about the entity, the COPEC, that has various means to inform producers, radio, walkie-talkies, and social platforms. So they visit the different sites just to find what the incidence of the worm is. Like that, we get to know what the wounds are. Specifically, a few years back were not very common, but since the birth and of some rams, we could see that in the navel they had that the worm. So in those cases, we were able to find out about the worm, the presence of the worm, and Copenhagen has always helped us to find ways to prevent cases of worm. So we, for example, try and make to avoid the worm to actually appear. So what we do is that at birth, if I see the presence of the worm, so I do a curation with the dust. Then I do, and I try and keep the calves on the roof so that they will not get wet. Because when they get wet, the fly will lay eggs on the skin of the animal if it's wet, and it's very hard to identify it. And then for the healing of the wounds, if I remember well, in the case of the worms, like in this example, I take a sample and then I heal them with oil on top of the wounds so that the fly will not lay more eggs. Of how do we work in our country to be able to address this screwworm emergency? We try and help different producers and find out which strategies to will have the best um, results. Surveillance, of course, is constant surveillance is one of the most important, and then having and just making sure that the animals that are given birth are very well taken care
Muchas
of.
gracias. Adelante, señor, por favor.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead,
Tenemos
sir.
otras preguntas, por ejemplo,
We
¿cuáles
have
son sus
other questions, for
principales
example, which
limitaciones
are
para
your main
controlar el worm?
constraints
Y si
to
desde
control
luego
and
está también
eliminate?
usando
And
alguna
if the
vacuna,
strategy for the screw
¿usted
worm,
considera que está
do you
funcionando
consider
¿Cuál
has
es
it
la
been
mejor
working in
efectividad
your sector
por
on
su,
top of
por
what you
su
have
compañía?
previously
Adelante, por
done
favor. Muchas gracias.
and what you've previously expressed? So please go ahead, sir. Yes, good morning. Well, for us, constraints that happened during the pandemic, because when we started, the REN was always a sector that was kept as a limit with the rest of Central America, of course, because of the border with Colombia. But in the case of Colombia, we have a jungle part. It's very exuberant jungle in that part. So during pandemic, at the right after the pandemic, we had a political incidents in our country. So we had some um, political problems and issues that we needed to address. So we had years with incidences of 12 cases, 7 cases. So we had access to the technician of COPEC, and they continued to delimitate those areas. When we had, after pandemic, there were some issues here in Panama that would mobilize the fly for the application for the sterile fly. A lot of species, wild species, that would increase. And then we had in some areas in Darien in which they would show like a downward trend, and that would actually in the latest years it happened to be increasing, and the situation actually just got out of hands and outside of the province. And one of the producers that is fully aware of this, I really don't like to leave the site unless I have an important activity. But the way that we handle about 50% of the livestock, it's but the problem also, for example, the bite of the bat actually creates wounds that would trigger up the different cases of the worm. The Copec, for example, I would like to say that they never really abandoned us, and they were always by our side because every wound that we don't handle, it's a pattern of more fertile flies in the area. So thank God, and the monitoring, despite we were not doing the dispersion of sterile flies. So there is data of infestation, but there is no data reflecting that. So we wouldn't find, as my colleague said, the producers sometimes they would try and do different combinations, and that was very efficient, but it wouldn't suffice because when it started spreading onto the other provinces, we had to pay attention to this. And the only area in the countries where we had almost 20 years of that fly having disappeared. So it was a completely different pattern than what we had in that inn. We knew that it was there, that existed there, and they just moved on to a region to a completely different generation, the hands of a completely different generation where people were completely relaxed and not aware of the threat of the screwworm. But thank God, and let's hope that the rest of Central America will be made aware of what's going on. But in the end, we we did all that we could do thanks to the help of COPEC and the government. There were sometimes, I think it was about the 5%, and at the end of the year, it would become a little bigger. So that's actually reduced since there was very little incidents. There was a very few people that could actually address the situation. Technicians, people were not made aware that this was a situation on the rise. So, but now we are addressing all of these issues, and we're hoping that this strategy of contention will be fully adopted by the government. And that will be my message because we need to understand that we are producers and this is private interest, but
Súper
we need the help we
excelente,
can get.
muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. Very, very
Quizás pueda
interesting.
abundar un poquito
I
más
don't
en alguno
know
de los
if you
temas
would
que
like
ya las
to
preguntas que
actually
vimos. Tenemos
delve a
en
little
alguna otra
deeper in some of the
presentación
things
aquí
that we have
productores
already
pues de
discussed.
países donde no
about the countries in which this is not an issue yet, or maybe the countries that already have this issue before we give the floor to the authorities of Costa Rica. We can always come back to this. We're going to do a small modification to the Q&A session because what's really valuable is all of this information you have provided, but also sharing the experiences from the productive point of view, from the production point of view. So that's why the members are very, very keen to hear what the producers have to share as to be able to disseminate best practices and whatnot. Are there any other comments before we come back to the Costa Rican colleagues? Well, I think that uh, just conducting work to drive cultural knowledge factors amongst the youth so that they know the issue, so that we can share the different experiences with other producers. So I think this is a work that starts with a culture of good wound management, for example, so that we can help drive down the incidence of the screwworm. So there are a lot of best practices that we can share. And very many times we tend to blame government organizations because they don't visit, because they do not provide technical assistance. But I believe that it's a matter of actually socializing best practices and learning from each other so that we can strengthen each other's weaknesses precisely because of our strength. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, let's have the intervention by Costa Rican producers and directors and leads of the different chambers. We have a master in an MBA, Eric Montero. He's the executive director of Dairy Producers of Costa Rica. Diego Ovando, executive director of the Livestock Producers Association. Giovanni Vargas Lopez, who is a producer as well. So maybe you want to answer some of the questions that have already been asked, but we would like to know in your position as chambers, as associations, how are you participating with your members? Which are the main messages you're driving through to the producers, and what has been your relationship with the authorities in your countries responsible for these topics and with other organizations as well? The Panamanian producer mentioned the relationship with COPEC. Thank you very much for everything you've done and all the support that you are leading in the Central American region to eradicate this plague. So, what's this relationship? How did you drive the information to your producers? Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Don Eric. Thank you, colleagues. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the invitation to participate in this important conversation. Let me start by saying that with the infiltration of the screwworm in Central America, has had some conditions, some different conditions compared to when it was eradicated in the 90s. First of all, the springs were used to irradiate sterile males and redistributed in Central America and in the containment areas. For a while, they were not duly refreshed or updated. So for a long time, we have the same strain that has a little viability with the females in comparison to the sterile males. As a first comment, the speed of the progress to the north has surprised us. the existence of biologic corridor, protected areas, forestry reserve, national parks that are neighbor to the cattle farms in our country. You can see this looking at a map of the forestry areas of Costa Rica. And maybe to this factor have not given the importance required, and thus has fostered the multiplication of the screwworm. In second place, a critical factor is the animals' movement, those who are illegally moved. There is no doubt that this is a voice secret. The illegal traffic from south to the north to get up to Mexico, and this has accelerated the speed the worm has moved. The way we are addressing the emergency, which is the dispersion of flies in areas where the worm has progressed, have left regions like Panama and Costa Rica and soon Nicaragua unprotected. One thing we believe vital to expand the capacity to produce flies in each one of the countries to continue with this containment. We are clear, we're sure that we're going to do everything possible from the producer's perspective to cure the wounds and to take the cultural practices that correspond in the farms. But if we do not have sterile males that could compete with wild males, the results are not going to be the desired ones. Therefore, we have an important challenge to generate the resources, the technological capacity and economic capacity to produce this sterile male viable in each one of our countries in order to take care of this sanitary emergency. I believe that to specifically answer Mrs. Campuzano's question, historically we have not had a better coordination. And in that case, our appreciation to AICA has been the entity that has allowed us to interact with organizations, NGOs, private sector, unions, and others. This week, we conducted an activity in AICA San Jose with the presence of One Health approach. So we have animal health, human health, and the implications with wild fauna and others. However, this amazing and historical coordination is missing tools to be much more effective. In the case of production of sterile males, it is vital. We have initiated the struggle to the sanitary emergency, important scarcity in the market of the right products for control, such as larvicides, ivermectins, doramectins, and so on. And this has generated an important concern. If we cannot take appropriately care of these cases in our farms, we are on a complex situation. Finally, I believe that besides the report, the cure of the wounds, we should work a little bit more to develop cultural practices that will allow us to mitigate the impact of the screwworm. For example, when we have the horning, when we mark the cattle with worm iron, so we should apply ivermectin or any other product in order to minimize the impact. And this in order to have a more proactive participation in the prevention of the cases. Finally, I believe we need to develop materials for training purposes a development, a specific development to take care of each one of the productive species. I mean, meat, cattle, uh, specialized milk, and for other species of work animals that coexist with us in the farms. See the case of the company animals was mentioned by Dr. Garcia Lopez in his initial presentation. I believe all of us have the same issue. Large populations of these animals abandoned, or another say they are important hosts of these larvae. I'll stop here and I'll give room to the colleagues, to the national colleagues.
Gracias, maestro
Thank
Montero.
you, Mr. Montero. Thank you, Mr. Diego Bando or Mr. Giovanni Vargas. Go ahead, floor is yours. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Diego Bando. I'm going to be quite punctual. Eric spoke openly in generic topics of the worm. I'm going to go to 5 specific topics and a comment for the colleagues from Mexico and Honduras that are or will deal with this issue. The first thing is to pay attention to wildlife, as Mary Montero mentioned. Ministries of Agriculture, animal health organizations, but wildlife and animals are possible dissemination channels of this issue. The farmer look at the animals in the farm, but who's taking care of the raccoon and other animals? Number two, containment. It is important to emphasize the containment because at the beginning in Costa Rica, it did not work. We saw the maps with their flights and institutional flights in Costa Rica border, and it crossed the border. Then we saw the maps of the Costa Rica Nicaragua border, and it crosses. Now we are seeing the flights to the border of Honduras and Nicaragua. Hopefully that will work. I cross my fingers and I pray for this to work. And this is where scientists and those who know the matter to know what is happening because the containment did not work. Third point, at the farm level, uh, check number 4, cure. So check oversight. Yeah, you need to oversight the animals, but this has a cost. And this is the other factor to see. We need to see animals every day on a farm. On a small farm of 20, 30 animals is easy, but a large one with 400 or 200 animals is expensive. The animals to detect the odor is important, but we cannot has done with one finger. It has a cost. We're told that we need to cure. Sure, we need to cure the cycle. We need to stop the continuation of the cycle. So I can cure with what? The market does not have products to cure, depending on the area in Costa Rica. Colleagues from Mexico and Honduras start talking to the private company for a massive import or massive products of what you need. If you get it and I hope containing will work and you don't get it to be able to apply it. Otherwise, the message is chaotic. I cure the animal, but I do not have items to cure him. And the other detail, with what? See how curious. We're missing technical and scientific information. So, for example, the permitting is not having any effect. Loramectin, yes, but those are cultural practices. Farmer is farmer. Oil, not oil. Cure, we're using this. Use this larvicide. What is the product that really works? Somebody has to determine this to avoid losing time. Time is really valuable. And number 5, the report. We need to report because the graphs that we see are cheating us. It seems that in Costa Rica things were they reduced, but no, this is not true. It's because the farmer does not want to report. What for if anything happens? This is an option, and the other option is what for to report if I know how to cure it. I know how to cure it. I have the product. I kill the larvae. I kill the worm, and I cure, and that's it. So I do not need to report. So we are struggling this in the social media with the information with this type of forums because the report is important in order to know what is happening, to bring the right information about the situation. So five aspects I mentioned: wildlife, why containment did not work, surveillance and cost of supervise to cure what to, with what to cure and what is the right product, and to report and how to channel a message to the farmer, which is important, although he knows how to cure it. So don't wait to situations that we have with COVID. When it happens two times or third times, I'm not going to report because I know the symptoms. I know how I can cure myself. Important to emphasize these 5 points, besides others points that may exist. Thank you, Mr. Giovanni Vargas. The floor is yours. Good morning, everyone. As Diego said, it will be repeating some things, but I would like to mention some specific points. What limits us to cure? What limitations have we had? One of the most important limitations we had in the due time and we are still having is not having medication available to cure the animals, to cure the myiasis, and to give them the right treatment. Why? Because when last July the appearance took place, people acquired the products available, and even commercial houses did it because they wanted to raise prices, to increase prices, and that was the situation that happened with a regular herbicide that had, let's say, it cost 3,000 colones. Now the cost is 6,000 or 7,000. This is one of the cases to mention, and there has been a limitation. Also, as the limitation is the lack of information that has been really important, has been a limitation with regard to cures. Many people misinforms without having the right knowledge. They say in the past, well, I had a case long, long time ago, and they do not consider that it is a completely different variety, more aggressive one. Or they say I cure with disinfectant that will affect a little bit the larvae, but they do not cure it. So they release the animal, and maybe they do not have the capacity to oversight him, and maybe they do not visit the farm regularly, and they come 4 or 5 days later, and the myiasis is still there, and it has proliferated, and larvae have were on the ground, and they start reproducing. Other misinformation, because of a lack of information, many people want to get rid of the problem, and there are producers that see they have one animal affected and they want to get rid of this. I put it on the animal on a car. I send it 40 kilometers away on an auction, and probably the myiasis is not noticeable, maybe in the vulva and the prepuce, but this fly dispersated, disseminated 50 kilometers away, and there's going to be a higher dispersion compared to the natural flight, which are 20 kilometers. So we are disseminating this. So we need to raise awareness in people, meaning that when we have myiasis or worm affectation, to be responsible, because it is part of the responsibility to cure the animal. And not only to cure it, how? Using any larvicide, we may even At the time we use Nebugon, but Nebugon is being reintroduced, I believe. But there are many ways to cure the animal, but the most important thing is not only to cure him and forget about it, but to check, to revise tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, till the meiosis is fully cured, that the animal does not have any risk. Another thing which is very important for me is to avoid the larvae to fall down on the ground. And very often people do not take this control to prevent the larvae from falling down, to avoid the reproduction. If the flight of sterile release flies is not fully elimination or eradication of the situation or the impact or the damage. In fact, this is just another stir in the chain. So we need to be really responsible. On its own, it does not work. For me, in my case, I believe in prevention, and this is the most specific part. And how to prevent? We prevent when one animal is born, when you apply the corresponding cure of the navel, and to manage oversight to this animal till the animal is fully healthy. So in some cases the conditions are not so good in the pens and the places they manage animals. And I have seen, in some cases, I have seen pens with loose screws, and others. So what happens with this? The animal gets a wound on his own. So one of the main condition is first the birth because of the navel of the newborn that needs to be cured. Another condition is because of transportation or because wounds in pens or because animals that are wrongly managed. We sometimes see if an animal uh, jumps and we do not repair the fence, and the animal starts having problems, and the fly enters this way. To take care of the animal the moment of the delivery, because at the calving time, because when the cows will calve, the valve is closed a little bit, secretions begin, and we do not realize this. So the fly gets there and expose, and finally we saw that we have a vagina meiosis or a vulva meiosis, because there are sometimes there are weeds and other situation in the pasture that damage the animal. So one thing is prevention, responsibility that we must have to avoid transporting animals to get rid of the problem, because what we do in this case is we create a more serious problem. If we take the animal elsewhere, so the animal is moving, and that affects wildlife, as our colleagues said, is one of the most important cases. To do so, we need to go to the flights of the release flies. So we're not going to try to catch a jaguar to cure him. This is it on my behalf. Prevention, cure, surveillance, and some medics to see if an animal is isolated. Thank you very much,
Don Giovanni. Bueno, veo que el
Giovanni.
Armando García,
I see Dr. Armando Garcia
la manita levantada.
has his hand raised. Go ahead, Mr. Armando. I would like to share the strategy.
Casi no se le escucha, doctor.
It's hard to listen to him. Really, it's difficult to listen to him. He needs a microphone, really.
Bueno, adelante, doctor.
Mi intención es decirles que se sustenta un poco.
Doctor, perdone, me indican las traductoras que no se le está escuchando, que es muy difícil escucharle, doctor. No sé si quiere intentar con sus audífonos, es que se hace como un eco.
A ver, ahí me escucha.
¿La escuchan mejor? Un poquito mejor, sí. Adelante, doctor. Vamos a tratar de que se escuche mejor.
Ahí
Gracias.
Ok. Con la finalidad de contribuir, y yo
In
sé
order to contribute, and I know that maybe the resources I'm going to mention are not available.
el tratamiento con el
The treatment with Womagos, we tried in Nicaragua,
el producto funciona
and the output works pretty well. The product works pretty well.
larvas de la herida.
It helps to move a big amount of larvae from the wound. We made an agreement with the Lanco Lab to have a unit of 10 grams. However, for the inspection points where our staff will work, they will work with liquid material, hypermethrin with another thing. And with that, we can see what wound is already treated. So we tried in Nicaragua as well. It was not me, it was two experts, entomologists that work with this. And the discussion about the ivermectin is interesting because they discuss the concentration, say ivermectin 1% does not work, you need to use doramectin. And if you use ivermectin, it has to be 4% or 4.5%. So we have not found any article telling us that the larva of the screwworm is resistant to ivermectin. We have not found this. If you have it, I love to get a copy. But what we can tell you is that without having the publication, I have requested the publication of these works. So we tried hypermethrin 1%. Hypermethrin was of several trade houses, but the one that lasted the least lasted for 18 days. The cycle of the fly is up to 21, 24 days, but the larva phase is 8 to 10 days. So why do we decide to use ivermectin? Because it will have a release period and extended period, and with that I could eliminate the ones that I didn't see. But the first step is the bath with a trade product. The treatment is combined. It is important that I mention this. I don't want to make any ad, but the product is hypermethrin will cross for bath. And one braided, we apply hypermethrin, and with that, they can move this imaginary barrier to the north. We have confirmed that it works well. In the case of the difference of concentrations, the hypermethrin molecule is the same. The only thing that changes is the combination, and this one is the one that gives the most extended release. If it is much more extended, you require a higher concentration. Right now, any lab will say, no, 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 you need loratadine, but it costs 5 times more than ivermectin 1%. And this for a failed task implies a big difference. First, I do not have the scientific evidence, meaning that the worm, not the tick, because we always talk about tick. The worm the screwworm is resistant to the ivermectin 1%. There's no publication confirming that. And the concentration of ivermectin and the use of duramectin is it is mentioned in the resistance of the ticks. This is the information I would like to share with you. That's why the decision and how we're going to intervene initially. So any plan is subject to to changes. So when we find resistance, something that is not working, welcome. We're not going to change radically what we're planning to do. But right now we have practical evidence. There's no publication, scientific publication yet of what we are using. I would like to love to hear your comment. Thank you, doctor. This information is quite pertinent, and we hope that when the article will be published, we can share it with producers that are following us and with people from other areas. Let's continue with the presentation of the intervention of Mexico's producers. We have Mr. Octavio Hernandez, General Director of AMLAC, Dr. Pedro Garcia Escamilla, Chiapas producer, Mr. Dr. Ivan Espinosa, representing Mr. Heriberto Hernandez, President of Opermex Central Oil. Good morning and thank you.
Con su gremio, con otras organizaciones de productores a nivel local, usted que está allá en Chiapas, que es pues una de las zonas de mayor riesgo, ya lo comentaba el coronel Armando García, ¿cómo están ustedes preparándose a nivel local? Adelante, don Pedro.
Hola, ¿cómo están? Buenas tardes a todos. Les saludo con mucho gusto y la oportunidad que me da mi amigo, el médico Arturo Mancosay Córdoba, coordinador nacional de ganadería, para poder hablar un poco de esto. Les he escuchado atentamente y bueno, pues nosotros
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to talk over here. I work here in Chiapas. I live in Chiapas. I am a dairy producer. Chiapas is a state that does have borders with Central America, and it's an important state when it comes to the production of beef, meat at the domestic level. We have an early alert system, and we're trying to keep a direct channel of communication with our state and national authority channels. I have attended to at least 3 meetings in the last 2 months in which we have had the opportunity to discuss between different producers. And in Chiapas, which is mostly that has to do with livestock production and has a southern border with Central America, and they have given us technical assistance in the general of the phytosanitary division, for example. And what they have been saying to us is first off, getting to know the fly, because many of us, we never got to leave that period of Mexico when we saw the screwworm. And so we have been doing a little bit of getting to know that. Up to this moment, this is something that I had requested from the Secretariat in Mexico, but we haven't found that. We haven't found any miatis of a screwworm in Mexico, but they are doing some preventive approaches, and especially when it comes to even there have been some posters and some ads that have been doing not only for alerts, not only for the livestock, but the migrants that are on their way north, and they have been given some recommendations like washing their hands before and after any wound, keep any wound keep their arms covered. with long sleeve shirts and to proceed with the curation or the healing of the wounds if they have any open wounds. So there have been a lot of awareness raising in the different points when it comes here in Chiapas, especially when we are talking when we're talking about distribution centers, gathering centers for bees to start going to the north or the central part of the country, and they have been visiting us. So first off, there has been an increase in mobilized cattle numbers. So we have been seeing baths by aspersion or maybe even immersion, submersion that we rarely saw in the past. We have to be frank about that. And we are going to see like larvicide showers, mobile larvicide showers. We had not seen in the past, and we're seeing it now. So they have asked us to do something to have very clean corrals, free of flies. They have suggested the use of some chemicals, for example, ipermethrin and the porifrost, which is that what Dr. Armando just mentioned a moment ago. And they have also requested, whenever possible, to have spaces where the animal cannot incur into any injuries or sustain any injuries. Specifically, they are suggesting that we try and avoid castration or dehorning if it's not necessary. Procedures that would cause wounds in the bees. And when we're talking with ivermectin and is what we use right now. And it's drawn my attention that some people of age that had this process in the past, they have suggested in the past, first, the use of sulfide in the bath of the animals and the use of a plant used called amine by mean of a by an ointment done with this plant, prepared with this plant, and is part of the process that we have been perceiving. And last but not least, it's drawn my attention. This is an important effort by the government. At least this is the way I see it, because we are addressing the issue not only from the from the livestock industry, but also from the Ministry of Health and also from the Department of Protected National Parks and Areas. Uh, I wanted to just be very, very candid before you folks. We are busy, we are hectic, but we do understand that it's going to become a concern if we do not work as a team, all of us. So we can see that the screwworm continues to spread, and it is a cause of concern for us. So we need to be in coordination and be prepared. Thank you very much, folks.
Gracias, doctor Pedro García
Thank you,
Escamilla.
Dr. Pedro
Ingeniero
Garcia Escamilla.
Octavio.
Engineer Octavio, please go right ahead, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you, folks. And thank you, Dr. Pedro Garcia, for sharing your concern in an area that most definitely is seeing all of the progress they have seen could be the first one that could be affected most effectively for us in the Association Mexican Dairy Producers. We have been working in a strategy of communication. We have done two webinars, this one included, as to be able to disseminate which are, first off, the concerns, the status, what the region is working. And as I had the opportunity to work with you, Rocio, we believe that animal health it's something that actually is a concern for the entire region, and the work done through ICA and LIRSA does allow this interaction. I believe that in the SICA we have has been following strategy that could be very effective to contain and reduce the impact of this mm, problem. We have been doing through conferences, through conversations, and we believe this is something that we need to continue doing. Another part that we believe it's very necessary and that we have been reinforcing a lot is the convening of all this information in social networks. The more this information is readily available for all of the stakeholders, the better it'll be. Animal health is incredibly important, but this ability that has to become something like a necessity has become critical because we're going to have affectations in human beings, and this is something that we have to pay attention to. So we believe this information needs to be transmitted to as many sectors as possible. So we have made information available. We have been conveying all the information that we have available so that the most amount of people are in the know and that we can take all the prevention measures and actions that can be taken. As Dr. Pedro says, it's not only about being preoccupied, it's about getting to be occupied. So this is absolutely key for what we're doing. On the other hand, I believe that a very important part that has been mentioned and that Armando Acido has said is the healing of wounds. So hopefully, Rocio, we're going to be able to. There are some technologies that we have been investigating about that could probably accelerate the scattering processes and reducing the impact of these channels with which we can uh, prevent the flies to lay eggs and we can minimize or maybe slow down the spread of this disease. We believe that maybe we have been providing support, maybe not in all fronts, but with our best intervention, and we continue to work with ICA. Thank you very much, Rocio.
Gracias, Octavio.
Thank
Doctor
you, Octavio.
Espinosa,
Ivan
¿qué
Espinosa,
perspectiva nos puede dar
which perspective
las
can you give
organizaciones
us from
porcicultores aquí en México que se están
the
preparando? Quisimos
producers
invitar porque pues no todo es el ganado bovino, ¿verdad?
pork?
Muy
It's not all
importante
about
y es el
bovine,
que
it's
más
also about
afectado, pero
pork,
hay otras especies.
and there are some other
Adelante,
species.
Iván, gracias.
Go ahead,
Muchísimas
please.
gracias por la oportunidad de estar aquí y un
Thank
gusto
you very much for the opportunity
tener
to
estas
be
charlas.
here and to share with all of the experts here that
El
already
estudio y todos los avances que se están
talked
haciendo en los
about
diferentes
this
países.
research study and the
Como bien
different progress in the
señalas,
different countries. As
es
you will put
importante
it,
también poner
it
sobre
is
la mesa
important to actually
esta,
bring to the
el
table
bienestar
of
de los
discussion
porcicultores, ya que
the topic
hay
of
muchísimas personas
the production of
que
pork,
padecen este problema como un
because
problema
you might label
afectando millones de
you might label this
agricultores en
issue
todo el
as a
mundo y
bovine issue, but
sabemos
that
que
would be a
todos los temas
mistake
son bastante
because we
delicados.
believe an affected
Es
species
importante
is also
no detener todos los
porcine.
esfuerzos que bien decía
So
Octavio,
all of these
en la
efforts, as
comunicación es
Octavio
fundamental
says, in the
para
communication is
poder
absolutely key as to be able
garantizar
to
los productores tengan la información
conduct
correcta
all
para
of
que
just to
eventualmente
make sure that all the stakeholders have the
una
right
sanción
information
sea
and whatever
poder
findings
detonar las
notification will
acciones
be absolutely key to
bien
be able
llevadas a
to
cabo y
set
ejecutadas
on all of
para
the
todos.
different actions.
Yo creo que
But
lamentablemente con lo que
I
caminamos es
believe
hacia una
that
notificación oportuna.
with what they will
Probablemente
be probably
si
best, it
llegamos
would
a exagerar
be having a good notification.
exagerar un poquito en este
So,
asunto, más vale tener
in this
pues
point,
falsos positivos en vez
it's
de notificaciones que
worst. It's best to have just
realmente
false
están impactando
positives
en campo
uh,
que tratar de
than trying to
pretender que
just
el
trying
problema
to
del que está ante
the
nosotros
problem that
no
before
es
our eyes
abrumador y que
is not
podemos estar
a
dejando una
screwworm, and
oportunidad
that
para
we might just
tener
lose
unos
the
buenos prestadores
opportunity
comerciales en un país donde
to
podríamos ser una
help
huella muy pequeña
a process where we could have a very
sin
small
impacto al tener
print
una enfermedad de este tamaño.
to have a
Esto
disease of
nos
this
beneficia no
size
solamente
from
por lo que se
the
hace con los porcicultores en México, sino
not
en
just
toda la parte
all of the
latinoamericana en este
areas
continente,
in
porque es un asunto no solamente
Latin America and even continental. This is
las
an
afectaciones
extremely serious issue
económicas que se
that
pudieran
due
dar
to
a
all
los
of the
esfuerzos que vamos
economic
a tener que
implications
porque
due to the
todo
impact,
lo
it
que
could be
podamos
really, really big.
hacer
So
en acciones
everything that we can do as preventive actions will be fundamental. And I believe that it's admirable to see the deployment of all of these programs and strategies that are being implemented in the different countries as to be able to pay attention to where the areas where the problem is already an issue, and then also all of the different grids to try and avoid dispersion of the issue. And we are a little concerned about containment of the problems, where we, before it gets to typically areas where we typically produce cattle, all the preparation done at the regional level, I believe it's very, very valuable. Today, we are using well advanced tools in these uh, public-private partnerships because governments definitely have to provide the best solution for these problems. The private sector, we believe we can actually provide a lot of the action, provide support to a lot of the actions led by the government. Today in Mexico, we are preparing these control points where through which we are seeking that we verify the mobilized um, cattle through canine units in a supplementary action to the human inspectors, that they do the visual. And we can see that the abilities that dogs have to detect the smell and then maybe just multiply the work that done on field. Opermex has different canine units and a lot of the airports for the mitigation of the African porcine pest. So we are sending, for example, a canine units so to this region where we're trying to support this inspection with a dog that has already developed the ability to sniff the screwworm. This is an incredibly valuable tool, and so we can see that we can provide support like this. We understand that all of the countries in Central America are working with this modality. So I believe that all of these proposals will come to strengthen the capacities of management that the region has, and that we hope will be solid enough as to minimize the progress of this issue and eventually have actions of control and continue to contain the affected areas by the fly, waiting that in the midterm we will be able to mitigate this issue and we'll be able to talk about a successful strategy in the future of how the contention was taken in this time. So thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Iván.
Thank you,
No
Ivan.
sé si don Pedro
I don't know if
quisiera
Pedro
agregar
or
algo
Octavio, would you like to share anything so that we can
productores
provide or
de
give the
nuestros
floor to
países
some of the
vecinos
producers in our
o podemos
neighboring
pasar? A lo mejor
countries?
me gustaría hacer una
Or
reflexión ya
maybe
que veo
I
que
would like
está
to do
el
a
doctor
little exercise
Vargas
here. I can see
también. No
Moises
sé si
Vargas Terán is
doctor
here as
Vargas
well.
le gustaría
Dr. Vargas, would you
que
like
hiciera
to
muchas preguntas en
participate?
el
I
chat,
see that you were
pero
able to
quisiera
ask a lot of questions in the chat room, but maybe you want to open your
únicamente en
microphone.
caso de que el doctor
So,
Moisés
Dr.
Vargas Terán
Maybe
quisiera
Moises Vargas, you would like
acompañarnos
to
también, sumarse a este
um,
conversatorio.
add to this conversation.
Adelante,
If you can make him a
tiene algún
panelist,
otro
please.
comentario, don
If
Pedro,
you have any
Octavio,
further comments,
Eric
Pedro,
y los
Octavio, Eric,
compañeros en Panamá.
and our colleagues in Panama, please raise your hand as to be able to
Gracias,
promote you to
doctor
panelist.
Moisés Vargas. Nos ayuda subiendo
Thank
su
you.
manita para que lo
Dr. Moises
podamos
Varga,
agregar.
please
Si
raise your
usted
hand so
gusta
that you can be
participar,
made
nosotros
a
ahorita cuando
panelist.
veamos sus preguntas nos lo
Or
anotamos.
if you would like to just
Bien,
participate, let us
empezamos
know via
ya
chat.
entre los
Also, I can see that amongst the participants, we have Dr. Sorry, I forgot the name. This Hermana. Would you also like to maybe talk to us of how, from the Secretariat of the Environment and Natural Resources, everything that you have been saying from the public-private partnership and the teamwork is very relevant, and we have to involve these sectors, people from environment, transporters, people that commercialize livestock, the introducers, maybe even the workers from all these places, the fairs where you have concentration of livestock. And I was just telling my colleagues we have to involve nurses as well. And if they cannot, because there have been some, they can identify the myiasis, then there is a very valuable opportunity there for detection in humans. I think we still don't have Moises Vargas Teran, doctor. Oh, I can see him right here. Hello, doctor. It is a pleasure to greet you today. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here. Let me just say, he is an international expert when it comes to control and eradication of this screwworm in cattle. Thank you, doctor, for being here today. Go ahead, please. I just wanted to just say good morning to every person in here, ladies and gentlemen. And there are some questions that I have already posted, and I'd like to say thank you to ICA, OISA, and all the international uh, organizations that have been part of this activity to combat and prevent the contention of the screwworm. I would also like to say that to this moment, we do need a sub-regional effort with the countries that have the problem, that have been reinfected, and the infection-free countries. We need to have a consensus of all the different countries so that we can establish the priorities. For example, we were able to hear the opinion of Costa Rica regarding releasing sterile insects. Where is it most effective to have this? Mexico has done some proposals already, and we would recommend in which the population of the wildfly population is way reduced, and the few samples of sterile flies that we can see, for example, in Panama, 28,000 cases. In Mexico, in 1978, we got to have 50,000 cases. So, in comparison, Mexico has almost 2 million square kilometers. It's enormous. It's right now, Panama, it's a factory of these worms. So, so we don't have a lot of success here, but maybe we should be using that in the region a little bit more to the north in Honduras to establish a natural barrier there. But that needs to be done with political will and the cooperation of all the countries so that these can be managed very well so that we can have quarantine belts to avoid migration and the mobilization of animals, or that it will be a control mobilization and these quarantine belts to actually reduce them as the cases reduce. Again, just try and go back to push the disease back to the border with Colombia. This was the same technique that we had when we had the program in Mexico and Central America. So it will be fundamental, this consensus between the countries to establish that region. I would like to congratulate you and commend you on this type of exercise, and also the producers that have been absolutely key in the eradication program, the National Confederation of Livestock, and the association, the SWARP from the southern part of the United States for the export of animals were actually the cornerstones that were used in Mexico for this because these two organizations requested either countries in a bilateral manner the eradication of the screwworm in Mexico. And I believe it is important to say that the producer's engagement is absolutely key, both for control and eradication. Thank you very much for having allowed me to speak in here. Thank you, Doctor. It's a total
Doctor
pride to have you
Avendaño,
here.
adelante, por favor.
Please go right ahead,
Sí, muchas
Dr.
gracias.
Avendanya. Thank you very much.
Hacer algún comentario de lo que el doctor mencionaba.
Maybe
En
just
esta
to
ocasión necesitamos
say, add on to something what the doctor said,
abarcar más sobre lo que se está haciendo en la región.
we were not able to talk about what we're doing in the
Se
region
están
because of time
desarrollando
constraints, but
el
really
laboratorio
our
de biología
capacity is
tenemos
being built.
actualmente
The
una
only
isla
lab of monoclodura
de producción
production is
que se
Codepec,
sobrepasó por lo mismo que
so
le
we
estaba
have
mencionando
overcome
anteriormente
that
y por eso
capacity,
se ha tratado de
and
mantener
that's
esta
why
estrategia de
we
poder
have tried
poder
to keep
mantener
this
unos
so as to be a little bit ahead of the
muy
flies,
sensibles
so to
que no han
speak.
pasado por fronteras.
If it's possible, then it has gone
Al
through
establecer diferentes
borders,
vías
despite
de
having established
mantener
quarantine belts. And
una franja de
the
más o menos
normal,
50
the
kilómetros
idea is to have a contention belt of 40, 60 kilometers wide
estas se han
so that
estado
we could
estableciendo
try and do that. So we have been establishing that due to the mobilization of animals, not only due to the fight itself, but due to the mobilizing of animals, because they are being mobilized 200, 300 kilometers, and
detener. Sin
we
embargo,
have not been able to stop it.
lastimosamente también la
But
cantidad
regretfully,
de
the
comercio
capacity of flies of Copec
ha enfriado
towards Nicaragua
las distancias
has already been
y en este caso ya se ha
limited by the
establecido
distances
procesos
of
de
flies that
erradicación de estas
does
especies y
imply.
estoy
And then
seguro
we've been having
que puedan ir
dispersion
poco
of
a poco
flies
y
both in
reduciendo
Nicaragua and Honduras so
la
that they
cantidad
can be
de
released
transmisión.
directly
Ya se tiene establecida
onto these
una
areas.
estrategia de
So we have
control
also established
para
the
la frontera
grid strategy
entre
for the border
Nicaragua y Honduras
between Nicaragua and
de
Honduras.
dispersión y
So
también
where we have been doing
se está
the
probando
dispersion,
y se ha
and
realizado
we have
pruebas, se
actually
está
tested
haciendo
and we
algunas
have conducted
pruebas
some
sobre la liberación terrestre
tests
funcionando
on
bastante
the
bien.
land
Pero
release
bien,
of sterile
actualmente
samples. So that's something that worked very well a few years back, and that's the other strategy that we have been considering in Honduras. The first thing that we did was
ya se está
um,
planificando
the land
y
release,
la
and
evaluación
we are now
de
doing
el proceso
the
de
air
desarrollo
release as
como
well.
lo
So
mencionó el doctor Vargas,
as
¿verdad?
exactly as Dr.
Y
Vargas
tenemos
mentioned
una
it.
estrategia
So we do have a
que
strategy,
funcionó en los años
and what
90
worked in the 90s
cuando se radicó y es
at the beginning of the
tratar de
2000s when it was eradicated.
actualmente no ha sido prioridad
So
ni
it
perseguirlo,
has not
más
been a
buscar
priority right now,
en las zonas
but
donde ya se disminuyó un poco
in the areas
no
where
se ha disminuido, pero donde
it
todavía
has
está,
been
donde se encuentra
diminished
reducida
or it has been
la mosca
reduced,
silvestre, es donde se
the
está
wild
realizando, digamos, la liberación de la mosca estéril para poder
that's the wild
llevar a
sample. That's
cabo
where we
siempre
have been doing this,
recordatorio
but
entre
it's always
abejas a gusano
a reminder
etcétera, ¿verdad? Es mucho más fácil
that
controlar
it's
la
very complicated to control this
y la
with
recomendación
the
es tratar el
sterile
manejo de heridas para
fly.
reducir la
And
mosca
the
silvestre
first recommendation
tener
is to
pocas
do this
¿verdad?
wild so that the
Una
sterile
primera
samples can do
pregunta
their work. And that's the only part that I wanted to
Gracias, doctor
talk about.
Avendaño.
Thank you.
Por favor, señor
Dr.
Víctor Peña o
Avendaño,
José González,
Victor
veo que
Peña,
tienen
Jose
la mano
Gonzalez.
levantada.
I
Adelante,
can see
pueden
your
hacer la
hand is raised.
intervención.
Please go
Muchas
ahead
gracias.
with your intervention.
Algo sí, para, para ir al conversatorio que se ha llevado, agradecer la oportunidad, pero también darle como un mensaje a todo Centroamérica, ¿no?
I just
Una,
wanted to address all of the audience here.
bajar la
Once we
población de esta mosca
can contain this fly and try and restrict this movement across borders and bring it back to that end. And we need all the organizations and all of the different governments from different countries. We need a little bit more support because if this for 2 decades we had this controlled, there was a little support because financially it does require certain inputs and certain costs. So we do have an issue of, and with them we they had some canine units and that actually affected a lot. So that is the reality of Central America, that in the coming years, once we can control this pest, as a doctor said, now that you are taking the sterile or the sterile flight and take that to Costa Rica and Panama because we have to bring it down to contention belts. Once we manage to do that, we need cooperation from all the authorities, not only the bovine producers, but of all the entire society, because it's very, very dangerous with other species. So we need to keep the culture to maintain a and foster a culture of health, not only just with the livestock production, but in some cases, uh, human victims of the fly. So that's the fear that we have. But we understand that we need to address these issues uh, collaboratively in a more in a more cross-cutting manner because but we have to always think in the future to have better options. All of these organizations, all of the producers, that all of the initiatives they have to prevent so that we can pull back the border.
If this information is only with adults, or if you producers you talk about this with your family, your friends, even if they are not producers, if the community knows about it, about the worm and how to treat it, how to detect it, how to prevent it, and what is being doing, maybe Dr. Garcia can support us. What is being doing with the schools, agricultural technical schools, secondary high school, primary high school, even kindergarten students. I remember a case in Argentina where since the early years they learned to identify uh, some of the ones for after sure foot and mouth disease using a video uh, using games. So systematically the teachers gave them this game for them to be aware. What are you doing with youngest people, not necessarily those that are really embedded into the production, but schools? What communication do you have with teachers or other community leaders? Thank you. I would like to continue as we did before. Panama, I see you have your hand raised. Would you like to add something? Yes. COPEC entity and any trade in relation to your question has posters providing the information about the cycle of the screwworm and how we can detect it, how we can prevent it. Normally, they provide trainings to producers, to high schools. Normally, they have a dissemination side that visit all the provinces So, uh, in relation to practices, something we have practiced, many producers have practices when we rotate the place, animals can come there after 25, 26 days to avoid the ticks in that place, not to be able to continue propagating. We have used an injectable also with B12, and with this we prevent more bites. Systematic path with the permetrins, and we also use a pH regulator in water for a better effect at the time of encountering this type of animals. Thank
Gracias.
you.
Costa Rica,
Yes, Costa Rica,
algo al respecto.
would you like to add something this regard? With regard to the specific question of education, I believe that I must thank governmental institutions a lot. AICA, MAG, Corfora, Chamber of Cattle Farmers, they have made a pretty good dissemination of the problem, but I do feel that we still need more education at the high school and primary school level because of the serious case of incidents in domestic animals. In Costa Rica, this has been one of the contamination focus. Let me talk about dogs and cats. I believe education in children and young people in high schools and primary school must be uh, conducted at higher levels. So it's important that the family learns about it. We have not misinformation at the level of the social media. We have used it a lot, even at the level of chambers through TV. Many efforts. I really thank the institutions for that. But at the level of education, in my view, we need to make much more efforts in order to prevent that, for everyone to know, not only to know, but to recognize the miasis and to remove the uncertainty that exists with other worms or miasis species that occur at the same time, that occur in other environments. Here, because of a lack of information in relation to families or how homes with pets get alarmed and move public officers because of some animals on a dog. For example, for one torso in or a butt fly on a dog. So those who can use a vermectin or abamectin to use it in order to prevent, and this is not the case of everyone. The one that produces milk cannot be apply dramantinas or vermentinas, or vermentin or dramantin. They need to use other matters to other manners to eliminate the miasis. But in the case where people can use this, welcome the use. And those who cannot use it, to use what they have at hand or what they consider the best adapt to his production, his or her production. But particularly to emphasize in one of the things needed, in my view, is prevention. If we prevent the wound, we have made a big progress because we're gonna avoid meiosis. So prevention, if we have it already in the animal, you have meiosis in the animal. So try that meiosis does not continue, that the worm does not fall on the ground, and the responsibility of not transporting animals that are affected to avoid extending the problem or expanding the problem. This is it on my behalf. I don't know if Diego would like to add anything else. Thank you. Yes, the message I would like to leave is that we need to revise, to heavily revise the channel and the way I will disseminate the messages. I comment to people from Honduras and Mexico, you will face this soon. The message has to be clear. Very often, the message is quite engineering, veterinarian, and the message is for the producer and the sons of producers. So the message has to be clear and simple, no contradiction, or to give examples of things that went wrong. Report to this number using the social media WhatsApp, which is agile. But the farmer received this wrong message because he was waiting for an answer. He wanted people to come to the farm to to call him, and the tool was not created with that purpose. It was just for reporting purpose. But we have to explain this is just to report, and you will be called later. So this causes a problem because what's for to report? What's for reporting if they won't locate me? And the other thing is, and to be clear, better to say there's no capacity. We're not going to be there in 24 hours. Please wait for 1 week. But he has to be clear. And the other detail is what will happen with the farm. Many farmers says, if I report, they put me in quarantine, I'm gonna lose my sales, my production, and this is false. It is not happening, but it generated noise, a problem. In summary, my comment is be clear in the messages, who will send it, how it is gonna be sent, to have references, I don't know, somebody that can talk, somebody believable that people trust the person and obey the person. Thank you very much. Eric in Mexico, to move very quickly to the questions. I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about flies. We are clear and we are sure that maximum possible has been made with the installed capacity we have, but some of us believe and consider that it is necessary to invest in the countries for adaptation to adapt some labs where other species are produced, such as the fruit fly, to improve the condition we may have in our countries in the most critical areas. And this requires to invest from the international organizations in order to take care and to stop the possibilities of expansion. If we believe that anything has been effective, but no, we have the flag almost on the border with Guatemala, and from there to Mexico, just a leap. So don't forget that. So let's put it on the table and discuss it as a valid option to take care of this. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pedro Garcia, Octavio, Ivan. Would you like to add anything else about the topics recently treated? I just want to comment that here we have made an important coordination with universities, those who have the agricultural vocation, as in the case of the University of Chiapas, Faculty of Agricultural Studies. I believe the key of this, at least in Mexico, where we do not have the disease yet, is to be organized. Number one. Number two, to be informed. And number three, to be united, to work in teams for this to be contained And if there's a case, to solve it immediately. Perfect. Octavio, floor is yours. Well, to reiterate the need to have a good communication system to keep these activities carried out, to have most possible people informed. And as the different speakers commented, to get not only to the producers, but to approach other people, as you mentioned, to get to schools, for them to know a little bit more about this meiosis. Uh, but I believe what you mentioned is key. So to use a language not so technical, to understand the situation and the implications. So to reiterate, the work and the offer with AICA and our veterinary service on ASICA, we believe it is making an important job to generate this promotion strategy and to reiterate the commitment with national cattle thing. I would like to emphasize the importance of things like this, where we can learn about the situation and how we can support. I believe the key word today is collaboration. The role played by Mexico right now, the role of support for countries affected, and that this is letting us to see the development of the challenges in the countries where it has occurred, and that led us to conduct preparation actions, decide actions that led us to work efficiently in actions of prevention and, as this saying says, getting prepared to the worst, expecting the best. I believe the efforts conducted, multidisciplinary efforts conducted to take care of the problem in places it happens, and if it happens this side as well, using effective actions, that will be vital. I believe the role AICA as a moderator or coordinator to play, or as an entity who groups the efforts of all these countries, is quite interesting and very important. And on our side, from our side, we'll support any necessary action, hoping to have the best result as a result against this serious problem, the screwworm. Thank you. So now let's move quickly to the questions and answers section. I'm going to skip some of them because they were already addressed. But during the interventions, we're going to address this.
Al doctor Eduardo Serrano, al cual le mandamos un gran abrazo. Nos comenta, en mi experiencia en Centroamérica hasta 2005, prácticamente no existían mecanismos para el control de la movilización de los
In
animales.
my experience in Central America, there were no controls for cattle mobilization. How we moved forward, how we come ahead in this topic. I don't know if you folks have a question, have an answer for this question. I don't know if Eduardo Serrano is still among the audience, but yes, I can provide an answer for that. Please go right ahead. Yes, we have done great amount of efforts to control the transit of cattle from south to north. There are, sorry that I use the term, there is, for example, a post in El Ceibo, it's an inspection post in Guatemala, in which we can go through that inspection post and issue an alert about an animal with a blue earring, and they can continue. The Mexican earrings are yellow. So inspection post, we have good referrals. Maybe what the doctor means is that for each of these animals that go through the border legally, there are very many that cross the border illegally. And we are doing some efforts. We are doing efforts of traceability, but that has, of course, um, derived into certain problems. For example, corruption, where people change the earrings for the animals. So we don't really want to address this as a health issue with the smuggling issue, but either way, it's already here, it's documented, it's been vetted, and it's coming over there. But the problem in Mexico that Central America does not have is that there are a lot of animals for repasturing. There are they're mostly just calves, male calves. We do not import from the south. We do not get anything because it wouldn't be allowed. But that's the application if they permit for us at the inspection posts. This barrier, this work that is being done is precisely to avoid dissemination northbound, but our country shows the problem. The calves that are going to do repasturing. We don't do other kinds of cattle. People that are producers, dairy producers in these states, need to have different conditions, but they are not going through this inspection post because they're locals. They're just going to recommercialize. Sorry that I extended myself, but from the health point of view, animal health, regardless of whatever documentation, what they are going to do is have the document that they were bathed and that they were washed and that they were medicated and how they go through the border. So we don't know. Some of them actually even swim across. Thank you, doctor. It truly is an issue that we need to address, and it's one of the greatest challenges that we need um, to address as well. So, uh, and people that are migrants is also another risk factor. Mrs. Vargas or the Dr. Nestor Vengaños is asking, is there a scientific document that shows the causes for the screw worm north of the border in the Pondilarian in May 2022? What would be the patient zero, so to speak? No, really, nothing has been written, nothing has been reported, no papers have been published that would provide or shed some light as of what the cause would be. There is nothing as of right now. Regretfully, of course. The cases just started increasing north of in Panama, and that's how it was disseminated. And as the producers well mentioned, with the experience they lived, there were certain issues that were missing back then, and but there is no document for that.
Me parece que esta podría ser para usted
It seems
también.
to me this could be for you. There are various questions here, but I'm going to try and summarize them. I was telling my audiences we are going to be sending all of these questions to our speakers and producers, guest producers, and the members of the association so they can help us in addressing the questions. But many of them have been addressed in the conversation. Elisa Vasquez is asking, what's the estimate, the most recent estimate of the screwworm in the region? Dr. Avendaño already said that, and which factors could have an influence in a potential increase about its propagation? I think the first one has already been addressed. If you want the second one, allow me to, would you repeat the question for me? Which factors might be influencing in a potential increase of the propagation? Which factors would increase the propagation? That's what she's saying, right? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, okay. Really, um, I think that it's going to be a little redundant, but the lack of healing the wounds of the animals, and all of the actions that need to be conducted. If they're not conducted, that's what contributes the most to the propagation of the disease. But while the mobilization of animals makes it move way faster than by itself, the same way if they don't have like an appropriate management of wounds, so that is going to avoid that the fly actually gets there. And if there's no a treatment of the wounds, that will be one of the main factors.
Doctor Moisés Vargas
Absolutely.
pregunta,
Moises
pregunta
Vargas
Iván
is
Espinosa,
asking, Ivan
Margarita,
Espinosa,
que
but
podría
it's,
ser
I think it would
Octavio.
be
¿Tiene
Octavio maybe.
conocimiento si
Do
la
you have any
Asociación
knowledge
Interamericana de
if
Ganaderos,
the
CIEG, está
International
activa, ya que pudiera tener un papel
Confederation
importante
of
en la prevención,
Cattle
control
Producers,
y erradicación subregional
do
del
you
mosquito?
have anything, any influence on the control? No, right now I don't have any current knowledge, but if you share the
Muchas gracias.
information, we'll send the
Perfecto.
information for
Bueno,
you.
vamos a
Thank
leer
you.
algunos de los
So let
comentarios
me
y
read some of the
observaciones.
comments or
Eh,
observations,
bueno, hablando sobre lo que decía el doctor García
talking about what
eh,
Dr. Garcia
sobre
said,
el tráfico de ganado en
the
Centroamérica. Bueno,
cattle smuggling
este,
through
pues
Central
existen problemas
America.
que
It
sí se
does
no
exist. It's
podemos
an
negar,
issue
han
that
estado
exists. We
aquí,
cannot
hay
deny
que
it, and
hacer
it
lo
needs
que ya
to
comentaba el
be
doctor
it needs to
Armando
be
para
done what our Dr.
evitar
Armando
que estos
said to
animales
try and
puedan venir
avoid those
infestados al
animals
país,
that
¿no?
will be infected coming
Efectivamente,
into the
pues es
country.
un problema que nos atañe a
Most
todos
effectively, this is
y
something
como ya se
that
ha mencionado, entre
has to
todos
do with
podemos
all of
buscar
us,
mejores
and then we need to
soluciones.
find the best
Ujú.
solutions. Yes.
Ya se habló también
Okay.
del tórsalo, aquí la
We
doctora
talked
Ana
about
Francis decía que no lo había
Anna
escuchado,
Francis
ya nuestros
talked
hermanos de Costa Rica lo mencionaron. Ujú. Agradecimientos de varias personas.
the
Aquí
Torsalo
menciona Silvestre
fly,
Cucún
Sylvester
su
Cookums,
correo para recibir
and
las presentaciones,
asks
sobre todo la del doctor Armando
if the
García López.
presentations can be sent, mostly Armando
Aquí
Garcia
menciona Luis
Lopez,
Flores, la inspección de
Luis
organizaciones
Flores
es
mentions
importante, pues
in the
muchas de estas
commercial
pasan por el canal de
because
Panamá
many
y
of
son
these
solo
go
es
through
un
the Panama
país con
Canal.
muchísimos
This
casos
is a country with a lot
y
of
pues
cases of
muchas gracias
screwworm. Yes,
por
definitely.
sus
Thank you, Luis,
comentarios.
for your comments.
Las otras las vamos a obviar porque
The other
posiblemente ya la
questions, I
mayoría han
believe
sido
most of them have been
respondida. Vamos
addressed.
con nuestra agenda. Tenemos
So let's
en la
just take a look
conclusión y
at our
conclusiones y
agenda.
recomendaciones.
And over
Tenemos
here we have
muy
conclusions
importante
and
la
recommendations. It's
coordinación,
really important to
el trabajo
coordinate
interinstitucional
the
que
interinstitutional
incluye otros
work,
espacios activos,
including
el
other
sector
stakeholders,
educativo, el
other
sector salud,
sectors,
otros
sector of
medios comunitarios
education,
que pueden ser
academia,
excelentes para hacer
um,
llegar el
the health
mensaje
sector, so
que
as to
mencionaba
drive the
nuestro amigo de
message
Costa Rica, ¿no?
through, as our Costa
Las
Rican colleague
cuatro
said,
cosas realmente
the
importantes, la
four really
vigilancia,
important things: surveillance,
el reporte, la
the
notificación
reporting,
y el estar cuidando a
notification,
los animales, ¿no? Es
uh,
importante.
healing
Algo también
the
relevante es
animals.
que en los
Something really
países de
relevant
México
also is that
tenemos
in countries
más
like
de 60
Mexico, where
lenguas
we have over 60
originarias, pues
different
también va a ser relevante
indigenous
la
languages,
información que se brinda a estas
it's going to be very
comunidades
important how we
y,
relate these
a través de
issues
los
to
medios
them in their
que
indigenous
estamos
languages in
haciendo
ways
accesibles
that
para
will
las
be most
comunidades, para
accessible for the
los pueblos
indigenous communities
que tienen
and
estas
indigenous
lenguas
peoples.
maternas como su principal idioma, no así el español, sino su
And not in Spanish, but in the
esto es
indigenous
bien importante,
languages.
bien relevante y
This is
sobre
really,
todo
really
pues
relevant,
la
really important.
comunicación también
We don't really
de
have
todos
all
estos
of the
familiares entre los
team
países,
of
como ya
communication,
lo ha
so
dicho
we
uno,
do have
pues
the
las cuñas,
dissemination
se ha puesto a
of a
disposición
lot
también
of different
como
radio
las
spots
redes
and
sociales y los pósters,
um,
etcétera, que pueden
posters
utilizar
and whatnot
para
that the
colaboración
countries
con el
can use
ICA, el
in
COPEC,
collaboration with
DELUSA,
ICA,
IEFSA,
COPEC, the Luzda, IFSA,
así como
and
los
other
ministerios.
organizations,
Me
along
gustaría
with the
dar
ministries
paso
of
para cierre del
agriculture.
evento
I would like
a
now
doña
to
Alejandra
adjourn this
Díaz.
meeting with
Ella es la
Alejandra
coordinadora
Diaz. She
regional
is the
de
regional
nuestra sede,
coordinator
nuestra sede.
and
Ella
the
coordina
specialist in our main offices. She coordinates the efforts. Go right ahead, Alejandro. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rocio. Truly, we've come to the end of this session. Really, it's just wanted to thank all of the organizations that are present here today. We consider that it's really important to have this open dialogue and this open conversation. We've taken notes of many of the elements that you have pronounced, and some of these, of course, are part of our competences. For example, a work plan with ACES, who's USDA, and also some of these will be sent to the corresponding entities. As you well said it, the communication, we need to be factable, we have to be, but at the same time, user friendly. So, precisely on the week of October the 22nd, we're meeting with the different people responsible of institutional organization, including all of Central America, Mexico, and the support of FAO with Dominican Republic. So our work will be beyond just communication, but it will be the communication of risks per se. So we have consultants that are supporting us with this work, both technicians as well as communication. So precisely so that all of that language, all of those technical words can be put into very easy languages or in a way that will be user friendly. So this is a great challenge. But at the same time, in the risk assessment that we conduct, we have incorporated different specific groups, just like Rocio said, for example, having doctors, clinical vets, those that work with diversity in national parks, another specific, all the different schools, that's another specific group. And that means that while we do have a very core for our messages, we need to have a different jargon and different elements to be able to reach all of these audiences. This is a work plan that we have up to 2025. I think we have a great advantage and having different tools like they were 2 decades ago. So we have to make the most of this. It would be very difficult to do it presentially. Nevertheless, we do not do away with that possibility, having a regional encounter and somewhere where we could actually talk to the authorities to do work on 2025. The other aspect that we have to talk about are the different organizations that are here collaborating, COPEC, IRSA, the different identities like Falag, AMLAC, and those that are present. So I believe we have to gather information, get valuable information, like the doctor that had experiences 2 decades ago to address this threat. And in some cases, it's a case, this present plague. So I believe that we need to have the space to be able to document everything. Uh, so we are going to be raising some technical documents on lessons learned about these experiences that we could probably be gathering already to be able to document and establish all of these on a specific website that we will be consignating with the support of all the international organizations, regional and loose as well, so that even all of the messages or the radio spots, everything are part of a format that can be available for use for everybody. This is a message for this, it's a message for Facebook, so on and so forth. So the idea would be to um, provide the facilitation of the dissemination of all the information possible And we do recognize that when it comes to risk communication, the message as valuable and might be does require communicators and referrals because it's a matter of trust. And when it comes to trust, as Diego well puts it, we probably would be recurring to different persons and how we can actually establish that country in and country out so that we can use that level of influence that can be in the population so that they can actually get to that change of attitude or behavior. The same way we talk to Rocio, the way that in Mexico, for example, there is maybe a corrido with very particular musicians that we could actually have from the different regions that could help us because we really need to get to all the possible places. Something elemental that you said, and something that was mentioned as an experience 2 decades ago. It's the private sector is the main protagonist. It's not only a contribution, it's actually one that carries the burden and the investment in of all the practices that need to be implemented. But there is a win-win situation here, and that we have to sell that just the very fact that we are surveilling and healing, we are getting rid of the screwworm, but also we are addressing other issues, another like brucellosis and other tuberculosis that even in economic terms could be represent a higher risk for the region. So we're going to try and integrate all this important so that after this is addressed, so that the best practices will remain, all of these cultural practices that Eric talked about, that they will remain and making out of this region a more interesting religion when it comes of animal health with a greater possibility of economic growth and for that to be sustainable. Thank you very much, and we will see you soon in other activities. Thank you very much, all of you folks. We hope to have a conversation soon where we can continue to share all of these experiences. Thank you very much to all the producers and the representatives of the different associations. This has been incredible information. We hope that we're going to be able to disseminate it by means of our social platforms to other audiences. Thank you very much also to all of our colleagues from the SAYA region, program in the region and throughout the continent to disseminating this information to all of the relevant sectors and also to the people that behind behind the scenes, all of our as all of our interpreters, all of the people that are doing this possible. Thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you, Ale. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Gracias a todos. Hasta luego.
Gracias, Eric. Gracias, coronel.
Recording stopped.